Great. Are we ready to go then? That's brilliant. Thank you so much, and welcome to this session of Creative Brain Week. So the session 2, and the theme is Creativity, Health and Place. So my name is Bernadine Carroll. I work for the Irish Architecture Foundation. This is an organisation that's based in Dublin with a national remit which promotes architecture as culture. I look after a placemaking programme, and it was really interesting for me to be asked to chair this panel, because for me the idea of place and how you create place and co-create place is a big question, and something that we're facing in every part of society, in every part of Ireland and globally. It affects people from when they were born to when people are in crisis. And really, I mean, it's almost like a sense of how you look at everything from the social, the economic, and the cultural to the structural and typologies of housing and how places are things that we really need to tie together and really consider a bit more, especially in terms of our well-being. So the question is how to design and build neighbourhoods, cities and housing for health. So to start off our session, we're going to hear from Declan Dunn. We're then going to hear from and then we're going to hear from Emmy Kyoto, who's going to join us on live stream. So standing at the podium waiting for us is Declan Dunn of Respond Housing. He's going to speak about building homes and improving lives. Declan Dunn is the CEO of Respond Housing since 2016. Prior to that, he was CEO of Sophia Housing Association and a non-executive director of the Ballymun Regeneration Board, the largest urban regeneration project in Europe. In addition to all of this, Declan was chair of the Housing Alliance through 2019, chaired the homeless network of major homeless agencies in Dublin, and was a ministerial appointee board member at the National Education Welfare Board. Declan is actively interested in housing, education and family services, and has served on many boards and committees on these issues. So if you want to start sharing.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. So hello everybody, and welcome to this session. So I have a number of slides, and I'm going to just quickly go through them. Certainly I'm not going to read everything that's on the slide, but there'll be a prompt and assistance to, I suppose, elucidate some of the ideas. And a little bit just to kick off is, what is Respond? So Respond is actually a housing association here in Ireland, and we're involved in building and managing homes for people. And it's people who are on lower incomes, social housing. So a little bit of a sense of what we're trying to do. Our mission really is to focus on people and outcomes for people. And obviously housing is very important. You know, it's well documented that it's a key social determinant of health, good quality housing. However, neighbourhoods and communities is a much bigger subject. So that's a little bit about what our type of organisation do in terms of working to provide for the needs of people who depend on services like our own. Our focus as an organisation, in Ireland we have a significant housing crisis. This is not the only place where that's happening, but so our focus is to actually physically add to the national housing stock and not to manage properties on behalf of other people. So we've about 6,500 homes that we've built and own in Ireland. This is our 40th year in existence. And we'll see there's just some imagery in terms of, I suppose, the people who we're working for and how important it is, that whole message. A third of all of the targets for government for delivery in its current housing plan is to be delivered by organisations such as Respond. So this is just a little bit from one of our senior architects about the design intent in terms of fostering that sense of community that comes about when you have green spaces, fully accessible, front doors that face out onto open spaces, encouraging biodiversity, a mix of people, a slowing down to be together in a communal space has created that community. So in terms of our approach, we have an unusual organisation that, in addition to having a big cohort of architects, planners and quantity surveyors, well 20 odd of them, employed directly for us, as well as legal professionals, accountancy professionals and so on, to develop housing and deliver housing. Over half of our staff are involved directly, employed by us to deliver services. So that's childcare services, after school projects, homeless services, supporting refugees, a very topical subject here at the moment, but also elder care services as well. And the combination of these things with the housing, we would see as providing the potential for a community to be developed in a particular location. Just some images there. So in our work, we're trying to work on a tenant-led approach and a service user-led approach, and we have active programs of engagement and facilitation to allow those people we serve to have a meaningful role in determining what we do. Not a tokenistic consultation, but a meaningful role. And of course, we do all of those surveys that you'll be familiar with. We use behavioural attitudes here. 9 out of 10 of our service users are pleased and happy with what we're doing, but they also tell us a lot of other things about how we can improve. So this is just a little bit insight and might link into this. So we have 13 continuous improvement programs running throughout the organisation, and one of them is training in trauma-informed care. And I know you mentioned Novas earlier, and Novas is an organisation that has become a trauma-informed organisation, a homeless organisation. And we are in the process of training everybody in our organisation, and we've gone through, I think, over 200 at the moment. And what this is to try and get people to understand, because by the nature of our work is we're dealing with people who have lower incomes, who might be more distant from the labour market and from education, and their experience of the family dynamic mightn't have been ideal. So as we engage to support people in these situations, and particularly those who are homeless, they may present in a way that's challenging. So we need to understand what's going on for people, why they're behaving in the way they're behaving, and how we can take that into account. And it makes it much easier for us and much easier for them as we do that. So look, that's a slide. I won't go through all the detail on it, but it's looking at the different types of trauma and how this might occur. So we'd have the extreme end in supporting up to recently programs in 8 counties in Ireland for Syrian refugees who are really quite distressed based on what they've experienced. We have to see at the moment there's a big flurry of activity going on in the organisation and throughout Ireland in terms of Ukrainian refugees, of what we can do. We have some children already in our childcare service who've come from Ukraine, and I was hearing yesterday the level of distress that they're experiencing, like more than we would have even thought of. So this is a big issue, and I'm not going to be the expert to explain all of that, but it's just to say that that is one of the things we're doing in terms of improving our ability to engage. So the Global Brain Health Institute, so we've been working now for, I think it's 3 years with the Global Brain Institute in a partnership, and what we're looking about is learning from all of the fellows and colleagues in terms of this to add to our approach to our services. And we have selected a site in Baltinglass and Wicklow where together we're looking at a pilot program to develop a brain healthy neighbourhood. And it's really suitable because there's a mix of age groups there. There are actually, it's mainly Irish nationals living there, but there are some refugees, but there's also individuals, older people, younger people. But excitingly, there's a brand new primary healthcare centre that's been built on that site. And the person who leads out the elder person services used to work for us in the health service. We used to work with us. So there's a great relationship there. And we're really optimistic that this is a great place to start modelling and learning. You know, so what do we get right? What do we get wrong? And undoubtedly we'll get some things wrong. This is just nothing new for any of you here, but it's something I used to talk a lot in the area of in the children's domain about risk and protective factors. So all of this work is not hit and miss. It's not some kind of random thing. There's good research, there's good evidence about what are the risk factors, what are the protective factors. So as we go about trying to intervene and support people, there are particular areas that we can address. So this is just a commentary from a tenant in relation to a playground. This has become a big theme for us, and we've got there's a nice image in the next slide, I think. We've got really nice playgrounds, and they're not those plastic ones we had previously, and it's just stunning. It's stunning. And the difference, you know, we've built 94 homes up in Lucan here in Dublin, and every so often, if I'm anywhere near, I drive by, and it's just so exciting, even in the evening, to see that the children automatically, they're going there. They're not, you know, it's not by invitation. They gravitate. And you're moving into a completely new neighbourhood with new neighbours and new situations, you know, that place for play. And I guess creativity. The others will talk about that better than me. But I remember some time ago being involved in the Dublin City Childcare Committee on the board, and the first play policy for Dublin City came. And I went, what's that all about? And then I started to understand about the infant brain, about plasticity, about how play as a learning opportunity and all of that, and my education began on that subject. So these are important facilities. So in all of what we're trying to do, I suppose we're going to, how am I doing there for time? Am I halfway there?
A couple of minutes.
Okay. So look, I'll skip through this. But in all of this, it's about not doing things to people. It's about working with others to say what will work for them, and understanding that what you might do, and because we're involved in the 26 counties in Ireland, so there's rural Ireland, there's urban rural, and then there's the major cities, and it's about doing things differently, what works for people. This is just someone saying that they're happy to be in their home, and that's pretty much where I'll leave it. Thank you very much.
For questions at the end. So next up we have so Thomas Gray of Trinity House. He's going to speak on older urbanism and multi-generational households. So with a background in architecture and sustainable design, Thomas is currently a research fellow at Trinity House. Thomas is currently involved in a variety of urban design and building design research projects, all with a user-centred and sustainable design focus. The projects range from a low-carbon adaptable house project to larger scale shared space design through a universal design approach, or a sustainable indicator project for the Dublin region. In all cases, the human as user is central to these projects, with an emphasis on the user-centred, universally designed, occupant behaviour-driven design solutions. Apologies for that, it's a bit of a tongue twister at the end.
Sorry for giving you the mouthful.
No, it's great.
Could have made a short one. Well,
Thanks.
you know, in many ways I'm going to pick up from where Declan left off, and I'm going to kind of zone out, kind of zoom out a bit and look at the kind of urban scale. And I'm going to start looking at the kind of, you know, healthy urbanism and so on. But I want to cycle back to the neighbourhood. And actually, this wasn't planned. I didn't actually fully know what Declan was going to talk about. So it's interesting that I'm going to also really focus on the neighbourhood as this critical spatial model. So look, the Roman architect Vitruvius talked about laying out a healthy city in 100 BC. We've been doing this for a long time, right? We know that health and the built environment and cities and urban environments are critically linked. But we haven't been dealing with it properly. That's the problem, of course. But a concerted approach, I suppose, over the last couple of decades through the WHO and the UN Habitat have really started to build around this kind of idea of the healthy cities initiative and healthy cities process. So back in the 90s, we started looking at how you could integrate healthy cities with urbanism and the planning process. A fantastic document came out in 2000, Barton Healthy Urban Planning, which was really a foundation of the WHO Healthy Cities Initiative. And finally there, and it's a very recent thing, there's such a superb kind of compendium or kind of online form of information now available on the WHO website around urban health and urban design and urban issues. Really worth going to. Splendid amount of information there. So if we look at the WHO Healthy City Objectives, and you know, we start to, I suppose, come back to say, looking at where Declan's starting at the kind of the housing. I mean, that is the starting point, right, in many ways, and then working up through the scales, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But equity and reduction of poverty, again, is something that would be critical to Respond's work. Opportunity for healthy lifestyles, especially regular exercise. So this is becoming a huge issue in terms of obesity, in terms of fitness and health and so on. Social cohesion and supportive networks. We're often building quite isolated settings and neighbourhoods where people aren't given that supportive network to connect with. Access to diverse employment opportunities. Access to high quality facilities, including educational, cultural, leisure, retail, health and open space. And look, much, much more. We could add childcare, we could add lots of other retail and so on we could add there. Opportunity for local food production and healthy food outlets. Now, I think this is something that's really been ignored. We've all come to accept that you go to the supermarket and you buy your shopping, you buy your groceries from a shelf. They're typically plastic wrapped, ignoring what we can grow in our own vicinity. Now, we know that's changing, and we know we have allotments and we have city gardens and city agriculture schemes and city farming. So that is changing. We've road safety and a sense of personal security. Now, that's two things, and you could spend a long time unpacking that. An attractive environment and acceptable noise levels. So noise being a huge issue. And air quality. So through COVID, we saw the issue around air quality. We saw the importance of ventilation. We saw the importance of good quality outdoor spaces. Good water quality and sanitation. And then finally, and a really important point, and a one I will circle around to again, the reduction in emissions that threaten climate stability. We're now being told, and we know through very respected organizations like the Lancet and so on, that the biggest threat to human health now is climate change. So we can't talk about climate change, or we can't talk about human health and urbanism and design and planning without actually talking about climate change at the same time. So how are we doing? Well, we've way too many headlines in the last couple of years that look at cities in terms of air pollution, that talk about cities in terms of noise and becoming noisier than ever and the impact on noise. In Ireland, we've the pride in Dublin of being one of the most congested cities in the world. We also know that comes with noise itself, it comes with air pollution, it comes with a lot of things. Declan talked about the housing and the housing crisis itself. So if that's a key healthy cities objective, we're not doing too well on that format either. And in terms of the poor quality outdoor space, in terms of green spaces and so on, again, generally, while the appreciation of that has increased, it's an area that we're not doing spectacularly well in. Now, I like to credit the Global Brain Health Institute with the 12 modifiable risk factors for dementia, but Professor Lawler here in the front seat might not. So of course it's the Lancet and work that the Lancet have done around identifying these 12 key factors. But what I find really interesting from the GBHI's point of view is this idea that you can build a healthy brain throughout your life cycle. So that's really interesting. And what I find particularly interesting is the impact with the built environment. So I'm going to just quickly run through a couple of these things. And these are in no particular order except that the order that they're in the Lancet 12 objectives, or the 12 risk factors. So the first one is less education. So we know this could be caused by a lack of suitable and accessible educational facilities, from childcare, early learning settings, up to primary, secondary, but also, and really importantly, into adult life and into further education. Hearing impairment. We know that exposure to transportation noise and environmental noise is a huge issue here. Traumatic brain injury, excessive road speeds, poor cycling infrastructure, and we could name many other urban and planning related issues that have a correlation or a bearing on traumatic brain injury. Hypertension, again we're talking about noise, crowding, lack of green space. Excessive alcohol consumption and smoking. Now that's not something you typically associate with the built environment, but there are robust studies to show that our perception of the environment affects lots of different things, but also in terms of depression and so on. But negative perceptions of the built environment have been connected and been shown as a predicator to excessive drinking and binge drinking and smoking, or the lack of cessation in smoking and so on. So we have what might feel like one of the kind of outliers in terms of the built environment is also directly related. Now I've just bunched a load of these together across the end, right? Because we've got obesity. So we've things called food swamps and food deserts. A food swamp is where you have way too much availability of fast food outlets and poor food outlets. And the opposite is a food desert, where you can't get your hands on fresh vegetables or fresh food and so on. And that's experienced a lot in other countries like the US and so on, but we're increasingly seeing it here in Ireland. When we look at obesity, again, we're back to issues around movement and healthy and physical activity. Social isolation, physical inactivity, look, there's a range of urban issues here that are directly related. Lack of active travel infrastructure, lack of play and exercise space. Declan was talking about the beautiful play spaces that Respond provide. Lack of green space, lack of pro-social spaces that encourage positive social interaction, and lack of intergenerational activity. We look at air pollution. That's a really obvious one, right? It's one we can see. It's really tangible in many ways. So we're talking about vehicle and building emissions and power plants and generation of power in our urban settings. And then finally, diabetes. And again, we're back to lack of poor physical infrastructure or physical activity, food and so on. So a really quick glance across those 12 modifiable risk factors for dementia. Or, you know, you could flip them and they could start becoming healthy aging or healthy brain factors. Now, I mentioned climate change as a huge issue and becoming more so in terms of health. We saw it as an issue around, of course, around planetary health and a threat in that way. But we now know it's having a massive effect on our own health. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is currently looking at this in the context of old people. And they point out the vulnerabilities of older people, such as physical and mental risks, and highlight how older people face disproportionate impacts from climate chaos. Now, we're going to have 1.1 billion older people living in our cities by 2050, and we know that our cities are going to be hit particularly hard by climate change. Okay, the bright side. There's a lot of bad news there. The bright side is we're entering the United Nations Decade of Healthy Aging. And in that, there's a real recognition around the impact of planning and the built environment. And of course, there is the really great WHO global network of age-friendly cities. And fantastic work being done in that area in Ireland through AgeFriendly Ireland. And you look at some of the objectives of the age-friendly cities, and we start to see overlaps with our healthy brain factors. Provision of outdoor spaces, transportation, good housing, social participation, civic participation, community support and health services, and so on. Now, these are really complex challenges, and we really do need to look at them across our spatial scales. Everything from building to neighbourhood to city to town to region. However, a really important building block here is the neighbourhood. Declan just talked about the possibility of setting up a brain-healthy neighbourhood or community. And that's really exciting because that is the scale that we know involves people. People recognise it. It's manageable in terms of its scale, and you can also experiment and do pilots at that scale. Now, this has been recognised in more recent global documents around health and urban design and so on. So we look at this document, Integrating Health in Urban and Territorial Planning. They really nail this point down. They say neighbourhoods are the building blocks of towns and cities. And people live most of their lives in their local neighbourhood. But for children and older people, neighbourhoods are particularly important. And research document and research report after research report shows the impact of neighbourhood infrastructure, neighbourhood design, neighbourhood planning, neighbourhood features and so on positive or healthy aging. So there's lots of documents in this area that are really starting to zone in on this building block. And we see, you know, there's another document there, the Strategy for Sustainable Neighbourhood Planning Principles. And there you start talking about things like compact, sustainable, diversified, socially equal, walkable neighbourhoods, and interconnected networks of streets that facilitate safe and efficient movement, local employment, local participation, and a variety of lot sizes and housing types to cater for diverse housing needs. So, you know, we're starting to see this zone in on the neighbourhood and these kind of critical health-related and sustainability issues overlapping. So let's say we took a neighbourhood. Now, I'm just grabbing something from an old Dublin City Council document here. So somebody might recognise the Phoenix Park and so on in the background. But we take a neighbourhood within that, say loosely the Liberties or something like that, and we start to consider, right, we know that neighbourhoods are hard to define, and we've given up trying to define what a neighbourhood is, as it's very loose and we all have different impressions. But we can loosely draw a boundary around our neighbourhood that most people will agree with. And let's start looking at the people there across the various ages, abilities, sizes, and so on. Now, if we took the 12 healthy aging factors and kind of developed almost a crosswalk with the WHO Healthy Cities, we see such a correlation between these two things and reinforcing. And some are kind of plugging the gaps that aren't included in the others. But you start to build up this very holistic picture. Now, in the middle of that, or underneath all of that, is the neighbourhood, and some kind of key design and urban issues coming through here are our compact development, or a city of short distances. We've been hearing about the 15-minute neighbourhood for a long time now throughout COVID, and it's really getting traction. Mixed use. So this diverse uses, the availability of facilities and services and so on. High quality housing across the support and care spectrum. So rather than looking at this kind of very artificial divisions between standard housing, supported housing, and nursing homes, how do we start integrating across that spectrum? A multi-generational neighbourhood. How do we allow people of all generations to mix in a natural way and not forcing them together in a contrived way? Highly connected with good public transport and cycling and walking infrastructure. Calm and slower with good public spaces. We see the slow food movement, we see the slow city movement, and we know it makes a lot of sense. Slowing down and having a more controlled approach, whether it's speed limits and so on, has a big bearing on our health. A universal design approach, that when we're designing for people of all ages, sizes, abilities, and disabilities. Access to nature, really critical, again, coming through during COVID, that people who had access to nature, it really helped, and people that didn't, it was such a big issue. And then air and water quality, again, seemed quite obvious, but not always dealt with in terms of comprehensive planning. And then energy resource efficiency. So here's a kind of a list almost of key urban and planning features that start to deal with the crosswalk between the modifiable risk factors for dementia, or the healthy brain factors, and the WHO Healthy Cities. Perfect, I'm done. Last slide. So, finally, I just want to say, and this probably will lead on to our next speaker, but certainly it's some things that Declan referred to in terms of working with people, for people. In response to the concerns that the High Commissioner for Human Rights has about the vulnerability of old people, they also say that older people possess enormous knowledge, experience, skills, and resilience that give them the capacity to be key contributors. Now, I think this is really important. Rather than seeing us as we age as vulnerable, what about us as we age as a contributor? So some questions. As we plan for the adaptation and evolution of our neighbourhoods, should we consider more closely the alignment between how we age and how our places age? Should we take advantage of the knowledge and wisdom that older people bring and that also accumulates in neighbourhoods? We see that in places. It's almost something beyond people, but there's a layering of knowledge that's there. And how do we kind of capitalise on that? And is there a place for a growing older urbanism that harnesses the benefits of ageing, local knowledge, and the evolution of our neighbourhoods towards human and ecological health? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I'm clipping quickly along to Emma Kyoto. So Emma is founder of Abasho, and she will speak on building for the future of older adults. So with a background as an environmental gerontologist and a consultant and a PhD in architecture, Emmy is the founder and director of Abasho, an organisation that facilitates the co-creation with elders of socially integrated, sustainable communities that value their elders. Her current focus is on creating socially integrated and resilient cities where elders are engaged and able to actively participate in their communities. So she's published journal articles and book chapters and serves on the board of directors of the Global Aging Network. Dr. Kyoto has been awarded fellowships and to investigate this topic, including the Loeb Fellowship with the Graduate School of Design at Harvard, the Rockefeller Bellagio Residency Fellowship, and the Atlantic Fellowship for Equity in Brain Health at the Global Brain Health Institute at the University of California, San Francisco, and Trinity College. So welcome, Emmy. It's lovely to have you here in Dublin.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the invite for this fascinating discussion. And I'm really glad that I just came in after this more like, just a presentation that covers overview, because I like to really focus on really introduction of how I integrated the sense of creativity into built environment, especially for the life of older person. I think it was pointed out that the housing is really an important factor of mental health and well-being for human beings. But I think that it is quite important to have services that goes with it, because I think some housings really focus on the good housing, but not enough services. But how can we design the services? That's my questions. So I was taught by one of the gerontologists, my mentor from PhD. He always told me that the built environment is like a glove, an organization, and the people are the hands. And hands and glove has to go together to create the better living experience for older people. To me, it really always stuck with me to really think about everything we do. And, just like I said, I just really wanted to introduce how really creativity mindset really changed the way I work. This is just not, okay. So this is a little quote that I found in Bhutan when I was working on the senior housing for retired monks in Bhutan. There was a little school down the street, and it says, "The time to be happy is now. The place to be happy is here. The way to be happy is to make other people happy." It didn't mean much to other people about aging for this one, but it really struck me so much, because I feel like, wow, this might be something that we're just not doing it enough. We are just trying to create the best environment for older people. And we try to provide the best care for the older people and not bringing them to be a contributor to make them happy, because the way to be happy is to make others people happy. We might be taking that away from older person. So that really changed the way I think and also practice how to design spaces with elders. So this is a typical picture that we saw in Japan. And a lot of people think that Japan has a better elder care. It's in a way, there are many cases, but we still see the view like this. And a lot of people has image of older person in elder care this way. But when you think about who they are, and many of us actually, this is the reality of modern aging. We have this person, we created this Abasho, which I'm going to start to talk about what I have done for the last 10 years. This is a location we created in Japan after tsunami happened. And all these tsunami victims, we just try to rush into older people to help them. But at the same time, when you are sitting there asking them what they want to do and what kind of help they wanted to do something to others. And, that really, that really enforced what I've learned. But at the same time, when you really start to look at how older people behave, they're very healthy, they're very educated. And this very typical, those 3 high school students are playing game in the chair. Yet elder care policy and housing policy and service policy hasn't changed. So this is, to me, it is a wake-up call that we have to do something. And again, really learn from elders and just work with them. Because again, sometimes design perspective, we design things for the older people and we rarely listen to what they really need. And at the time of our age, just COVID happened, climate change is going to really change the way we live. Yet, we don't really know what kind of elder care we need. So it's more important to have older people's voices into the planning and design, from housing to the regional planning. So we created Ebacio, which is an organization. We work with community elders and organization to create socially integrated socially sustainable community that value older person. It is very important that we value older person's knowledge and experience, but we don't really focus on providing care for them. We really want them to be the other side. We want them to teach us what they can teach and contribute back to our society. So we created 3 places in Ebacio with the idea that, we want to empower and include older person to really rethink about what kind of service and community hub that's needed for older people to exercise their creativity, contribute back to the community to make them feel happy. So as younger people are able to learn from elders. So our vision is it's very simple. We really want to create the place where older people don't have to, feel fear getting older because they have a role to play, and there's social perceptions going to change. How we do this, Abasho, is we really try to put older person as a driver's seat to really help them decide what they need, because at the end of the day, it's the same as climate change. What we can do from designers part of it, we can create something, but if the older people don't take action, things don't change. And we are thinking about perception change here. So we want elders to really be a part of design, operations, and being creative about what they can do to others. So this is the place. So we had the 3 places: Japan, Nepal, and Philippines. And each places has different socioeconomic level, different capacity of the community, different needs of the community. So we created, this is from Philippines. They created their own space where they wanted to be helpful to the community members. So older people actually negotiated with the community members, the leadership team, to secure a place, and we raise funds together and create the space. And it's, I'm very biased toward the built environment, but once you have this, the community hub that's made by older people with their own vision, a lot of interesting things happen. So we just try to keep building as flexible as they can so that older people can actually make it perfect. So this is in Nepal. Again, we had very little budget, and elders did not want to get any loan. So we started to create this shed, and we all went into a bamboo forest, and we got all the bamboo and built this. Again, this is not the most beautiful building from this, many of the architects, but it is meaningful for older people in the community, and that's their pride that they were able to do that with children. And this is from Japan. We had this, Japan has a little bit stronger structure because they were able to raise more funds, and also that we have earthquake code is very, very strong. So we weren't able to really have a shed. So this is what we created together with elders. So what makes it Abasho I'm talking about? There are 5 different main components of it. We try to create the place that it's empowered by elders. So we engage elders to really plan, just create the plan together. And activities has to be, it's operated and planned by elders rather than just organization come and run it. So this place is a sustainable community-owned project, and the process has to be, elders has to decide everything. So when we negotiate with city, we empower older people, facilitate them, and prepare them to be able to talk to the elders, to the city members. And the elders leadership. So it's very important that we do always encourage elders to take a leadership role rather than just serving them and caring for them, because they are completely possible and capable of caring for the younger generation in many, many ways. And it really tied with 8 principle. That to me, we just try to leave the creativity to the community elders. We took this principle-based approach for Abasho because we wanted community members to, create their own space and interpret the way that they want it. So, just try to make Abasho, elders are not treated as a people who we have to care, but a value assets to their community. And we really just try to follow that. So this 8 principle, I'll go through this. By the way, this pictures are so beautiful. And my friend Rowena and Alex, who are in the Dublin at this moment, they came with us and really, captured a nice graphic of, just elders' life. And also Rowena really worked with elders to facilitate our discussions to make it better program. So the first principle is elders' wisdom. We do everything to really value the older people's, knowledge and experience. Next one is to create a normal place. People don't want institutional settings. And, this is the kind of place where kids can actually stop by on the way back from school and just try to create the normal place. Everything we do is community owned. So this is a very typical scene. This is from Philippines. This is how we actually design everything. They're not design professionals, but they are able to draw and write. And everything we do is multi-generational. So this place, everything is multi-generational. And institutional alternative, no one wants to be marginalized. For this person, was she has very severe dementia. She doesn't remember her name and her family member's name, and lived in skilled nursing. But she was able to make all this food when we were having this workshop, because she remembered how to make these things. So we really wanted to just point it out that all she needs is assistant, proper assistant, then she can be capable of helping us. Everything we do is culturally appropriate. This is 3 ladies from Japan, and this is how it's like in Nepal and Philippines. This is, they are creating, cooking something outside and for the feeding for children. And older people are very much interested in resilience issues and climate change. When we ask for what they want to leave behind for the younger generation, they want a healthy planet. They want, they want to have healthier food for the children. So elders in 3 places, they all do organic gardening and plastic collection to make the community nicer. The last principle is embracing imperfection. It is very hard for designers, especially architects, to do. But, real beauty lies in the sense of imperfection that creates sensible synchronicities. If we strive too much on perfections, then we create an institution where people want to stay away because it's rigid. To me, these activities that Romina did for the painting, this was a little paint and put a little water in it. And just they can create this beautiful collage of colors. And the interesting thing is that when you look at this, you don't know which one was done by person with dementia, which one was done by school teachers. Creativity, if you do it in a proper way, everybody, that really is very equitable way to include everyone. So that it's going to give opportunity for elders to be a part of the community. And we encourage elders, different countries from different countries to help each other. And if we can't have them communicate on site, then we have a virtual knowledge experience. So they can actually feel that they belong to bigger places. And intergenerational knowledge exchange. You don't have to have a class. You can be, just on that spot, something happened. And Robina's learning this woman, how to dance from this woman. And they spoke, she spoke no English and Robina spoke no Japanese, but somehow they were able to communicate. So the lessons that we learned from designers' perspective, I think we have to be very mindful that community is something that we have to negotiate and create with others, not something that we can passively receive. How can we create the community with elders? And the elders has to be a part of our solutions. And I would like to share some of the COVID response that elders had. Because COVID time, they needed to close. So elders actually changed the business slightly different. They had a ramen noodle shop, they have a farming and a gardening and a bi-weekly farmers market. They switched to unmanned stand, vegetable stands to be able to sell it so that people don't have to see each other to buy all this furniture, the vegetables. And the elders actually created the bento business, and they create the bento box and deliver it to the other elders who are able to cook something. So they have a local support group, and this is another COVID response from Philippines. Once that all this quarantine was out, and elders, what they wanted was to cook all this porridge and started to serve for the children who needs help. Again, we have a tendency that we have to help elders, and we have to rush and just help them to, support them. At the same time, we really have to think creatively. How can we support older people to help others? Because that really helps them to have a better, well-being and a better health and mentally, and they can have a sense of agencies. So I have, if it's not too long, I could show 5 minutes video, but if the time is up, then I don't have to. How am I doing time-wise?
Sorry, we actually don't have time for that.
Sure.
Sorry now. So that was fantastic, Kelly. We actually have time for questions now. Sorry for coughing.
Questions from the room. I'll take a couple online. Emmy, what we can do is show the video through the website. I have to do three things, which is multitasking is not my strong point. There's a question online for Emmy, which is, you said change the business in the slide just gone. Can you explain that? The Abashos, what's the business model for Abasho? What's the business model for Abasho?
Yes.
Where does the money come from?
Sure. So this is, it's a self-sustainable model. So we start from the very get-go. We have an understanding with elders that we are going to be funding our own way to develop the site and also to create the program and run it for a long time. So elders, everybody has a different funding sources. Japan, they wanted to have a vegetable farm, and they have bi-weekly farmers market for the community members. They also have ramen noodle shop. They serve lunch, and they have cafe. They're just charging small amount of money for people who can pay for it. And they also, just write grants, actually, because we have retired city workers and the professors actually are able to do writing grants. The reason behind this self-sustainable model was that elders did not want to fail. And we wanted to make sure that grants-dependent project is not going to happen, because when the grants disappear, then everything fall apart, and elders are aware. So we had this different business model to sustain it. It's not the easiest, but it is coming along. And
I'm kind of wondering, gents, so I'm also challenging the tech people. I'm going to walk towards the question at the front. Gents on stage, I'm wondering whether you have questions for each other, or whether, Emmy, you might have questions for the people on stage. I'm going to hand the mic over there.
So just to all of the panelists, thank you so much for the presentations. There's a very strong linkage between all of the presentations in terms of the importance of multi-generational input, neighbourhoods, and a sense of community. I think, Tom, your slide I thought was quite informative, where you showed the 12, big 12, the modifiable risk factors, and then you showed the, healthy cities, and then you showed the connections. But in reality, my question to all three panelists is there a connection, between the urban planners, the designers, and those sectors and health?
Well, maybe I'll take that first. I think there is in principle. Is there any planners here at the moment? I think if you read any of the development plans, they're often very fine documents, in fact, and they often address the diverse requirements that we've spelled out there. I think the levers of change and power aren't always with local authorities, for instance. So whilst they can make a development plan or a local area plan, which is a very powerful tool in itself, they can't make it happen. They can obviously put incentives in place, and they can put policies in place, and so on. But actually getting the private sector to react, or the public sector themselves in terms of procurement, is a real challenge in terms of providing that integrated approach across the various aspects. So to go back to a development plan, you'll probably find all of those elements there spelt out in terms of policy, in terms of development control, in terms of key objectives and so on. But when it comes to implementing that in practice, I think that's the real challenge. But despite that, I think there is obviously still a disconnect between the silos in local authorities and government and so on, between transport, between housing, between health, between education. And I think we've seen that in a lot of sectors. For instance, where schools are located, you know, you'd often think, is that connected with transport? Long-term residential care, an area that we're doing a lot of work in currently, oftentimes not located close to public transport or to make it easy for people to come and go from. So I think the disconnect is certainly there.
May I jump in? Or
Amy, would you like to take it and then back to Declan maybe?
Yeah, I mean, just
Oh,
to
Declan
comment
first.
on that, I suppose in Ireland, we have a model of local authorities that's quite different from the European model. So the European model is municipalities, and they have the functions of a local authority, but they'd also have responsibility for health and education. So that increases the chances, you know, like in the UK, local authorities, there's a league table, you can see how they're doing, there's key improvement priorities, and and it's important, you know, for them to do well and to be seen to be doing well. And in Ireland, that hasn't been the model. So in recent times, the primary care approach has been an important intervention. And when I worked in Ballymun, which is a big regeneration project, we had the first primary care centre. And that was about trying to get professionals from different silos, if you like, to understand and work together. So I think the actual physical environment, you know, it's everything that you said, the limitations of the planning, the commercial imperative, you know, all of that, who has the control, what happens, can determine the physical environment. But within that, if that's your hardware, the software can be the most powerful thing. So, and it sounds like what we've just heard, you know, that this is that key about the mobilization and facilitation of people themselves, and all of the frontline service providers. So in some of the things I've done before with Atlantic Philanthropies, it was really, you started with the most senior people, but actually and that was important to get buy-in, but it was actually the frontline health workers, school teachers, childcare managers, you know, community activists. So once they had bought in and once they were engaged, because it was their behaviors and they were doing the actual frontline engagement with people. So I'm not in any way disagreeing. I suppose it's the art of the possible. It's not what we're here to do, what we can with what we currently have. In our own organisation, we've gone out to tender and we have a UK firm, architectural firm, helping us with a design guide. So we're trying to inform our engagement with all of our, at the moment we have 1,478 homes in construction. So you tend to work with existing planning permissions and existing configurations, and it may not be the ideal one. So we're trying to turn this big ocean-going liner of having a design guide, having a big event with developers and all of the construction firms we're working in to explain, look, here's great examples. That's good. This is what we like. This is what we don't like. But the reality is they will already have pieces of land with existing planning. It's already gone through a process, and now you have to adapt it. But longer term, we're hoping design guide can change, move this, the design process.
Professor Kyoto, you might want to respond. You might want to respond to that. That's where it all goes funny. Emmy, you might like to respond.
yeah. Interestingly, I'm in the middle of those weeds. I'm working on a health district project in Singapore. And that issues happens exactly that's in the middle of the discussion. Because we have a strong leadership team, government, university, like housing authority, and universities who's doing a research, and the healthcare system and the long-term care system are part of all this discussion. But we do have a lot of disconnects in terms of discussions. And what I found is that everybody has the same intention and good intention. The language that we use is different, and the way the system works that we are used to is very different. But what we are trying to do is to come up with conversation about the users, just like who are we serving for, and just try to talk about human being and what the life of this person should change and what should be. And to start from that, so that it sounds very basic, but sometimes we just have to learn to speak in the same language, in the same room. And also we started, it's very important that we have these guidelines, and I go to all these conferences. The guidelines are very, very helpful, but I'm also scratching my head thinking, so what can I do tomorrow? What should we do to change a person's life in front of me? And this Abasho, we decided to use this Abasho principle and community hub in Singapore in a very small scale. And it's almost like a tryout example. So we are bringing private sectors to help us out, how they can actually support urban planner to come in and say where this has to be located, what kind of functions. And so it is very important to have a very strong leadership to really push forward idea, but at the same time, within the big scale of things, we always can actually try out small sort of like living lab to be able to figure things out. That to me, just going to, help people to be connected, because we have some common
is all about raising questions and asking questions and starting conversations. There are questions online and there are questions in the room that we just don't have the time to get around to today. We invite you, though, to connect with Creative Brain Week. This is the beginning of a 2, 3 or more year conversation. The expertise that we've managed to bring into Dublin, into connection, you are welcome to join with and take off in your own direction. I'd like to hand it back to the chair to close the session.
Thank you so much. What a fascinating session, and thank you to each of the speakers for presenting. I find there are very complementary pieces that take us from the domestic to the neighbourhood, to maybe the more interconnected kind of unmappable spaces of farming and markets. And something that I was trying to maybe think through the whole way, which was creativity, which is something that we kind of explicitly looked at in the end. But when we look back at it, creativity is the idea of decision making. So the idea that we have you've got options, you've got choices, you have the opportunity to think about what am I going to do next. Decision making in our built environment is quite interesting. What happens when you leave your door? If you don't have a choice as to where you walk, how you get somewhere, then that takes away an awful lot of your well-being, your sense of connectedness, your sense of belonging, your opportunities for living a good life. And that's happening a lot in Ireland due to the way we've developed as a nation, our car dependency, and those are the things we're trying to undo right now. So those are creative questions. Those are things of how do we reintroduce creativity into people's lives. An ideal neighbourhood, you have multiple ways of walking to the shop. You have opportunities for things to stop along the way. You have these options to connect. You talk about speed as well. You talk about, like, the both of you talked about slowing down. I'm like, slowing down from what? What pace are we talking about? What are we talking about when we're trying to create that? So those are things that I think are quite interesting, and how we frame place, how we think about place in a way that is maybe stepping away from norms that we presume are vernacular, or that are normative, or that are part of Irish society, or part of every country's society, that we've kind of adopted certain ways that have limited how we live and limited how we experience place. And that maybe the creativity is in how we design the interconnecting things, how we maybe scale back the planning we do places, how we create spaces for things to emerge and to pop up and bubble up, and that those are the spaces that we try and create in our public realm, in our housing. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining us here today, in live and online. It was a pleasure. I'm sorry for coughing through half of that.
That's live.
That's
Really,
yes.
Sure, that's on.
Yeah, but and I hope the conversation continues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.